it's me. I've had a lot of people ask me if there are any scary stories from my own life that I would like to share, probably because I'm always reading these true scary stories from other people's lives on my channel, and since I'm such a spooky person, I must have some spooky things to share. But instead of sitting down and doing some kind of dramatic, serious reading as if I'm reading something from a book, I thought it would be a little bit more fun to occasionally sit down and just kind of hang out with you guys and tell you about creepy things that have happened in my own life, just kind of hang out for a little bit. So this is the first story I decided to share because it is the spookiest, scariest, creepiest paranormal story from my entire life. So this all started my junior year of college. I was 20 years old and I had been living with roommates for my first 2 years of college, but I had just gotten an apartment by myself and it was awesome. I rented out this like creepy little apartment attic. So it was basically the entire attic of this building that I had all to myself. The ceilings were really low. I would call it my hobbit hole sometimes. It was really cute and it was super fun to basically just do whatever I wanted whenever I wanted. I could eat ice cream for dinner on the couch. I could order as many pizzas as I wanted and eat them in my underwear in the middle of the night. I could get up super duper early. I could have hamsters as pets. You know, just kind of like hang out and live my life how I wanted to, but it wasn't long before the novelty of living alone kind of wore off and I started to get a little paranoid. Now, I don't know how many of you have lived by yourself. If you have, you've probably gone through a similar phase where it's super fun at first and then it gets a little scary. You know, you're by yourself all the time. If you hear noises in your apartment, you know that they're not coming from a roommate or from a family member. Before you go to bed, you might be like running around making sure all the doors and windows are locked. It can just be a little scary sometimes. So inevitably, I started getting creeped out by some little things that I noticed around my apartment. Now, this is gonna seem like a weird detail, but it is important to the story later on. There was this nail in the threshold of my bathroom, and it was a really old house, so occasionally the nail would kind of pop up from the threshold a little bit, especially when the weather was changing, and it would stick up and get stuck on my sock, or I would scrape my foot up against it. So every few days I would grab my hammer and I would hammer that nail back in, and it just kind of became a regular routine for me. And then all of a sudden one day I came back from class and I had remembered catching my sock on the nail before I went to class, and I knew that I was gonna have to hammer it back in when I got back. So I grabbed my hammer and I walked over to the bathroom and I saw that the nail was already flush with the threshold. Now I knew that the nail would pop up automatically because, I don't know, I guess like the house would just like slowly push it up, but there's no way for the nail to have gone back down by itself. So I was a little weirded out. So I just decided to make a mental note of that, and sure enough, a week later, the same thing happened. I left to go to the gym. I saw that the nail had been popped up, but I didn't really have enough time to nail it back in before I left. So I came back and the nail was back in place. And not only that, but I just noticed that a few things were out of place in my apartment. Like I had left a blanket on the floor and it was on the couch, and I started to just get really creeped out. Like, there's no way that someone could come into my apartment. It's totally locked. Most people can't even tell that there's an apartment up there because it just looks like an attic. Also, if someone were to break into my apartment, that would just be a really strange thing for them to do. So of course, I come to the most logical conclusion. It must be ghosts! My apartment must be haunted. Oh boy. So, I start telling all my friends about all this weird stuff that I see moved around in my apartment. They're a little concerned because obviously they're thinking a little bit more level-headedly than me and assuming that a real person had come in and done this, but I was totally convinced. This has to be ghosts. There's no way that a person would come into my apartment and like tidy things up for me. Like that would just be a really strange thing. No one else has keys to my apartment either. So I'm confused, I'm paranoid, I'm a little freaked out. At that point in my life, I had never had a paranormal experience, and I was just, in a way, a little thankful that the first ghost I ever encountered was just so kind to be fixing things around my apartment. So things go on like that for a little while. I notice that the nail gets hammered back into the threshold occasionally, small things will be moved around, and I'm just getting a little creeped out. Even though it didn't feel malicious, there was something really unsettling about knowing that I lived alone and that things were happening in my apartment without me doing them and without my consent. And since I had never encountered a ghost before, I had no idea what could happen. What if it got pissed off? What if it didn't like the movies I was watching? What if, I don't know, what if it did something while I was home and I actually saw it happening? So I was definitely getting a little spooked. Now, after a few repeated incidences of this, I have one more experience. I come home, some things are moved around, the nail is nailed back into the threshold of my bathroom, and then I see it. There's a screwdriver. Oh, there's a screwdriver sitting on my TV stand, and I look at the floor and I see boot prints on the floor, and suddenly it dawns on me that this wasn't a ghost at all. It was my apartment's handyman who was coming in to fix things while I wasn't around. And that's when I start realizing that every time I noticed things moved around my apartment also happened to coincide with when I had called my landlord and asked for something to be repaired or for a light to be fixed or any other reason why the handyman would come into my apartment. Oh my god. So, a little embarrassing. I wish there was more to this story, but I guess just in an attempt to not bother me and like be really subtle about his job, my handyman would just come in when he knew I wasn't going to be home or when I was going to be at class and would just quickly do whatever repairs, put some things away, fix things that he saw that needed to be fixed, and one day accidentally left his screwdriver and totally shattered my ghost theory. Now, you guys might have noticed that I don't read paranormal stories on my channel, and the reason for that is that, honestly, I don't really believe in the paranormal. I think it's because I have experiences like this where I really want to believe in the paranormal. I really want to believe that there's some other reality that I'm not aware of and that so many people believe in so heavily, and I honestly would love to have a ghost experience. Now, I know some of you who have had ghost experiences probably think I'm crazy saying that, but I really just do want to believe, but no matter how hard I try, there has always been a logical explanation to every paranormal seeming experience that I have had in my life. And on top of that, I do obviously realize that there's some chance that the true scary stories that I read on here may or may not be true, but I like to suspend my disbelief, and if they creep me out and I feel a little uneasy or I get the chills or something when I'm reading them, those are the stories that I want to read to you guys. And I just don't have that reaction to paranormal stories, and I really wish I did, but I guess it's the fact that I just don't really fully believe. So I just can't suspend my disbelief when I read those stories. Like I said, since I really do want to believe in the paranormal, I would love if you guys tried to convince me. That being said, leave your best paranormal experiences down in the comments below. Try to creep me out, do your best job, try to make me believe, because I really, really do want to believe. And just because I don't believe doesn't necessarily mean that when I hear these stories I think that people are lying. I've had a lot of people who I love and trust very much tell me about their ghost experiences, and I totally believe them, but for some reason my brain is just such a brat that, like, since I haven't experienced them myself, they can't be true. Now, I don't really think that in the front of my mind, but I guess that's the way the back of my mind is processing it, and I just have a hard time fully believing any ghost stories that I have ever heard. So, try to convince me. Leave your stories in the comments down below. I'll let you know if they creep me out or not. If I like them enough, maybe I'll do a little reading of them, and who knows, maybe me sharing this story will make me a little bit more susceptible to the paranormal. I've heard that that's a thing. I also don't know if I believe that, but I'm willing to give it a shot, and if I do ever have a paranormal experience that's real, I will be sure to share it with you guys. Alright, I hope you liked my embarrassing ghost story, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.